So good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Coleman from Paul's Photo and the Creative Photo Academy. I want to welcome you to the amazing Creative Photo Academy Infrared Workshop. And this is our first session in the Infrared Workshop. This is the free version. That's right. You get your first one free, like many things else in life. Tonight's the introduction. We're going to go over a little bit of what does it take to do infrared and all that. All of the really hard questions, all of the technical stuff, we're going to talk about in the next 2 weeks, and then on the live shoot coming up in a couple weeks. So this is a really fun program. We've been doing this program now for about 10 years, and I see a lot of familiar faces who've been with us before on the program, and I'm excited to have you all here. I want to introduce to you our friend Lorez. She is from Denver, Colorado, one of our Creative Photo Academy students who is also one of our volunteer assistants. So Lorez, say hi to everybody.
Pleasure to meet everybody. Looking forward to learning with you.
It's going to be awesome fun. So Lorez, if you have any questions, be sure to ask when they have appropriate questions. If you think the question is best, wait. If the question is more appropriate to when we get to a break, I trust you on that. So what do you think? Should we get going?
Let's jump into it.
All right, we're going to go, baby. We're going to go. All right, can you see PowerPoint?
I can see, yes. Now, yes.
Yeah, there we go. So it went to the wrong spot. So right there, let me clean up my screen a little bit. And there we go. I want to welcome you to my world, the world of infrared photography. It's one of the creative things that I love to do. And we'll talk about why I do it and what I do as we go along. But like so many things I do, I really love it because it's different. And it gives you a different looking picture. And in this world of Instagram, we all produce so many of the same looking pictures, pictures with the same feel. I just love the infrared that way. I just want to welcome you all to the Paul's Photo Creative Photo Academy community. We have an awesome time. And whether you're local to Southern California, local to Torrance, or around the country, around the world, it's great to have you here. And it's great to have you part of our world. And at Paul's Photo, the lab at Paul's Photo and the Creative Photo Academy, we share these awesome core values of customer service, community, and sustainable business practices. That's what allows us to continue to be here. And we appreciate all of your business and your loyalty because, we need your business. We are a business. The rent has to be paid. The electricity has to be paid. So we appreciate you patronizing as you can to make that happen in an efficient and effective way. Make sure that you follow us, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Pete does some TikTok and some X stuff as well. So we hope that you're following along. I try to post as often as I can to make and have some really fun stuff. So the infrared workshop is actually 4 different events. So tonight, the introduction session, it's free. Like I said, your first one's free. So hopefully you'll get motivated so that next week you'll want to join us next Wednesday and the Wednesday after that to how to see and capture infrared images, the techniques involved in the camera, and then the week 2, processing infrared using Photoshop, Lightroom, Nik software, which is what I do to get amazing infrared photos. So both of those are $99. And then on September 22nd, we're going to have a live in the field shoot, a photo shoot, where I will bring a couple of models. We'll go to an amazing infrared location so that you can photograph in infrared for those of you who have a camera. And I will have a couple of Nikon cameras and a Canon camera for those of you who don't have a camera so that you can get some experience infrareding if you've never done it before. This is a pretty special process and it takes a commitment. And I appreciate your commitment from coming tonight and being part of this. But to really get into infrared, it's going to take a little bit more of a commitment from you. So what's my goal today? To inform you, to inspire you, to get you excited. Number one, to get out and photograph, and number two, to get out and try some infrared. And whether you are a full spectrum person or a 595 person or a 650 person or a 720 person, that all depends on what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. But I'm just really excited to have you here and be with you tonight. So what are you going to learn? Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to learn to make awesome pictures, to transform your thought, to change your vision, to add new tools to your kit, and to have a new way of seeing, a new distinct approach, a new look, a new processing style. And one of the things that I really love about infrared photography, it allows me to photograph during a time of day when my regular camera is put away. It is most effective in the middle of the day, 12 noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Right now where it's outside, my wife and I are away for a couple days, so I took it a couple hours to be with you guys, but it's 100 degrees outside right now. And if I had my infrared camera outside right now, it would be a perfect time to go photograph under perfect light. Does anybody have any questions, Lorez?
No questions.
All right. So my inspiration in infrared photography is always to make new and different pictures, pictures that challenge you as a viewer, pictures that allow me to share with you new and exciting things. That's my goal with infrared photography, is to always have something that's fun and exciting that, you really can't live without. When I look at my infrared photography, I also look around at a lot of photographers. A couple of you sent me some names of people. Do you know this person? Do you use this person? I'm going to look at all those names. But I want to share with you, number one, Nevada Weir. Nevada is a travel and landscape photographer. She has in the past been 720 nanometer, but she's kind of migrated now into the 595 range to get these different colors. I love her work. Take a look at Nevada's work. My good buddy Vincent Versace and I have talked about infrared photography for over 20 years. Vincent is a 720 and 890 photographer a lot. He does play with other things. Vincent is very, very technical and loves the challenge of trying different things technically. Vincent does a lot of landscape and scenery photography as well in infrared. Awesome guy. If you ever have a chance to meet him, he's a lot of fun to deal with. Christy Odom, another Christy is a travel and wildlife photographer, does a lot in infrared, amazing stuff. Take a look at Christy's work. And our good friend Piper McKay, an amazing wildlife photographer, travel photographer, based in Nairobi, Kenya. She and I have talked infrared for years and years and years, and how important that is to her work and her unique style in photography. And I want to bring you guys in to what we do and how we do it. So why do I love infrared? Because of the unique look to the pictures. The photos stand apart and are contest winners. They are award-winning pictures. And you can't win an award doing infrared photography just because it's infrared. It has to be a great photograph. It has to be a great composition and a fantastic exposure and tight composition. But the infrared gives you that little extra. I love infrared photography because it's best in bright sunshine. And we'll talk about next week and the week after about photographing infrared under artificial light and under overcast light. But I really want you to think more about bright sunshine, middle of the day, difficult, challenging light is where you're going to start with your infrared photography. So it wasn't always so easy. When I started in infrared photography, it was when I was in college, and I did infrared film. So the Kodak high-speed infrared film, where we had to take a film camera, load it, put the film in the darkroom, tape the outside of the camera closed with black electrical tape because the seals on the camera were not safe for the infrared. Unload, shoot the pictures, and then unload the camera in the darkroom, and then immediately process the film. Then we graduated to using, on the first digital cameras, using an infrared cutoff filter like the Hoya RM72 filter that you see there on the right. And that made great infrared images, except it was 15 seconds exposure in bright sunshine. And then they started to convert cameras at the beginning of digital. And most of us started with a pocket camera, a Canon PowerShot, a Nikon Coolpix, and you would convert that camera. And I am now on my sixth digital SLR or interchangeable lens mirrorless camera, infrared, that's been converted. And we'll talk about this progression and how it went and how it goes and why as we move along. So if you're going to get started, if you've never done infrared before and you want to do it, buy a filter. And if you come to Paul's Photo, we have some of the filters on sale. They're in our closeout bin. They're $40 for the RM72 filter. It's a great way to start. You need to be on a tripod. It's manual focus, manual exposure, and the exposure is 15 seconds in broad daylight. But it gives you a very unique look to your landscape photographs. And this is a landscape picture. This was not made that way because if it would have been, you would have seen movement in the sky and movement in the subject. Remember, 15 seconds. So what does it have to do? How do we do infrared photography? So if you look at your regular camera, you have your imaging sensor with the Bayer filter on it with the red, green, and blue pixels. On top of that, you have a filter, a low pass filter that allows the visible light to come through to get to the imaging sensor, but that filter reflects the infrared and ultraviolet light. And the reason why you have to do that is if you let all of the light through to the sensor, the pictures would just be this gray mess. So when we convert to infrared, what we're doing is we're taking that hot mirror or low pass filter off and adding a filter with a specific visible spectrum. So for my camera, that's a 720 nanometer filter. We'll talk about the different filters in just a minute. So that my camera, my infrared camera, allows that 720 nanometer infrared light to come through. It reflects the visible, it reflects the ultraviolet. One of the popular techniques today is to have a clear filter. Now, you have to have a filter in front of the sensor because otherwise it won't focus properly. So that piece of glass needs to be there. And a clear filter will allow infrared visible light and UV to come through to the sensor, but then you need to put a different filter in front of the lens or behind the lens to make it work, to be able to protect the sensor from all of the extra light coming through. Any questions, Lorez?
No questions.
Okay. So why do I convert? I like to convert a full frame mirrorless camera because if I've converted a full frame mirrorless camera, I get amazing picture quality, but most importantly, I get a camera that works like a regular camera. So my Nikon Z8 that's been converted to infrared works just like my color or normal. So what do you guys, if I say normal or color, do you guys understand that means an unconverted camera? So on the mirrorless cameras, normal ISO, normal shutter speeds, normal focus, no lens calibration, and I can do the viewfinder or the live view. So it works just like a regular camera. A lot of us today have an SLR camera we're no longer using. So that's the camera we want to convert. Well, on an SLR camera, you get normal ISO, normal shutter speeds. But because the focus is through the lens, you have a focus shift and you need lens calibration. And you need to shoot in live view, which means the autofocus doesn't work right. You really got to be on a tripod. It's not the right thing. And what's made infrared photography accessible to the masses is full frame mirrorless technology. And that's been the real growth in infrared photography. You know, back in the SLR days, we had to do live view focus, really a pain in the neck. I mean, it's hard to see in bright sunshine. You have to kind of be on a tripod. You don't want to do that. You know, if you notice on your old film lenses, not true on the digital lenses. Well, not because it's not true. They still have a focus shift, but they don't put the infrared focus shifts on the lenses anymore. If you look at your old film lenses, there was a red focus dot, which was the offset that you have to make in the lens so that it focuses on infrared. Now, when you work with a mirrorless camera, you don't have to do that because the focus is off the sensor, it's off the chip. So, what cameras do I recommend? Full frame mirrorless, highest resolution. Why highest resolution? Because most of us are going to make infrared pictures in black and white. And for those of you who just took my black and white workshop, I showed to you how important having the high resolution is in black and white photography to get all of the grayscale that you need. So Canon photographers, what cameras do I recommend? You know, the R5, the R8, the R. You know, for a lot of you Canon photographers are upgrading to the R5 Mark IIs. That's great. Let's take your R5 and get that converted. You know, my second favorite Canon to convert is the R. And you can buy those used today for 800 to $1,000. You know, that's a 30 megapixel sensor. It's the same sensor that's in the 5D Mark IV. That's an awesome camera to convert. In Nikon, you know, we convert Z5s, Z6s, Z7s. I really want to see you guys convert the Z7s and Z8s. So if you're upgrading to a Z8, take your Z7 or Z7 II and get that converted to infrared. Now, one of the issues that many people have is, okay, I've got my Z8, that's my go-to camera. The Z7 II has a different control set. That's why I just had two Z8s converted to, I have two Z8s, one infrared, one color. So my control set, my palette, everything is all the same. Sony people, the A7R series, whether it's the A7R4, A7R5, you know, with the 46 or 60 megapixel sensor, or the A7 IV with the 33 megapixel sensor. It all depends on what camera you have and are you willing to buy a new camera and have it converted to infrared. So,
Mark, before you
yes,
go,
Laura, go ahead.
is it a Canon EOS RA an infrared camera? Can we
No,
use?
no, it's not. The RA has a hydrogen alpha filter on it for use for astronomy. And that's the same camera is there was a 5D Mark III or 2A and the Nikon D810A. So that A is for astronomy.
And then there was a second question just saying, while you have the Z5 and the can you just use a Z6 or is it better the Z6 you identified in the on the slide?
Well, no, the difference is that the 5 and the 6 are 24 megapixel cameras. So for doing black and white, you're not going to get the reproduction out of it. If you've got a Z6 and you're happy with your Z6, you know, and maybe that's what you want to convert, that's fine. I mean, that's all up to you. And remember, I firmly believe that it's your money, not mine. You know, I've always been accused of spending other people's money, which may or may not be true. But my recommendation is always to get a newer, better camera converted. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So you have to decide. Do you want the same or similar camera to your color camera? Are you okay using two different bodies? For me, I really struggle when I'm in the field and I've got two cameras going. I've got my color camera and I've got my infrared camera. And if they have a different control set, that freaks me out. And it kind of gets in the way of my creativity. So I'm willing to invest a little bit of money and get the two cameras that are the same. I also want the latest technology. I want the latest focus technology. You know, the thing that really bugged me when I went to the Z7 and I got this, I mean, when I went to the Z8 and I got the second, not having the second Z8 for infrared, was the way that the screen worked differently. And I really loved the screen so much better, the LCD screen on the Z8 versus the Z7 too. So that was one of the impetuses that made me get a second Z8 to do the infrared. And I'm always willing to invest a little bit of money in the best quality pictures. You know, having the latest technology cameras, the best quality pictures is important to me. So what don't I recommend? Your old camera that's nearing the end of its life. I don't find it to be a good value to spend $300 or $400 on that to have it converted. And I certainly don't find it a good value to convert a crop sensor camera when your main camera is a full frame camera. If your whole life is built around crop sensor cameras and you want to have a camera converted, by all means, convert a crop sensor camera, because then your lenses are going to give the same thing. You know, for a long time, when I was shooting with the D200 infrared, my main camera was a D3. So I had full frame on my color camera and crop sensor. So it means the lenses didn't even work right. It was a real pain in the neck to do. So you also need to think about your lenses. And for infrared, you want the highest resolution lenses because once again, we're going to convert mostly to black and white of your desired focal length. And you have to be careful of a hot spot. And the hot spot, you see it here. It's not an optical fault. It's that your lenses are not designed to work in the infrared spectrum. The lenses, your Canon, Nikon, Sony lenses are designed to work in visible spectrum. The lens designers don't pay much attention to the infrared light that we're going to be photographing under. So what lenses work and what lenses don't? Now, there's a good chart at kalarivision.com. Some of their lens data is correct. Some of it I don't agree with. But generally speaking, and I do all my data by testing. So I will actually bring my infrared camera to work. When we get a new lens in, I'll put it on my infrared camera, take it out in the parking lot and take some pictures with it to see if it works. So what lenses generally work? The kit lenses, the 24-70 f4, the 24-105 f4, the slower 70-200s, the 70-200 f4, the 70-300 5.6, the 105 macro. But you have to test. What doesn't generally work are the fast lenses, the 14-24 2.8, the 24-70 2.8, the 70-200 2.8. And in Canon, Sony, and Nikon, that is a given. The prime lenses, the fast prime lenses generally don't work. The big zoom range lenses, the 24-200s, the 24-240s, the 18-300s generally don't work. Now, I was surprised, those of you who are Nikon people, the 28-400 works great in infrared on the Nikon. So, you know, for me, my go-to infrared lenses have been the 24-70 f4 or the 24-120 f4 on my Nikon. And a lot of people have been asking about that 28-400. It's a great lens and it works well in infrared at every focal length. Now, remember, it's an f8. And if you can live with f8, that works. Questions, Lorez?
No question. Sorry, my mute was oh well, no, actually sorry. Sterling had a question. Or it was a statement. The Z 100 to 400.
100 to 400 works great. I'm going to share my kit in just a minute, and that's part of it. So, if you want to convert a camera, it's a commitment financially. Number two, it voids the warranty. And not only does it void the warranty, Nikon will no longer repair, Canon will no longer repair, Sony will no longer repair that camera. So that's one of the reasons why I don't recommend spending the money on your old camera to get it converted to infrared, because when that camera breaks, you're going to throw it away. And now you're kind of spending good money after bad. And that camera will only be infrared for the rest of its life. You really can't afford to convert it back to sell it. So it's going to be an infrared camera. You better love it. But I promise you, it will change your life if you use it as directed, because you'll be making pictures that are just unbelievable. Questions, Loris?
No questions.
So who converts? The two people that I recommend for conversion are lifepixel.com and Kalari Vision. I have been using Daniel at LifePixel for 25 years. They do an awesome job. And in fact, if you go to have a conversion done there, it'll ask who recommended you. Mark Coleman, Paul's Photo are there. Please tick me off there so that I get credit for that. Kalari Vision, awesome people. I just don't get as much of a warm and fuzzy from them. I get a lot more answers out of Daniel and his group. I get better service for my customers as far as speed and what they're offering. Does anybody have any questions about that? And how much does it cost? It costs between $200 and $400 depending on the camera. So, as we talked about, on your digital mirrorless camera, you have the sensor, you have the filter. That filter is removed and changed. What filter are we going to add? And once you do an infrared camera, it's just, I mean, it just rocks so much. So let me show you something here too. On the top of my camera, you see on the hot shoe right there, I took the hot shoe cover, and it's got a piece of red tape on it so that I know exactly which camera is infrared. And in fact, now that I'm a fan of the Peak straps, so the Peak slide and slide light straps now come in 4 colors. So I have all of my cameras with the black straps are the infrared camera. So the other straps are the other different colors in my camera bag, so that I can know when I reach into the bag which strap I grab is the right color. So I know which camera I'm grabbing. So why a mirrorless camera? Why are we going to make that infrared? Better pictures, lighter camera, faster, live exposure control, which is important. Focusing off the sensor, it's the future. You know, the cameras are nearly completely programmable. If you want to learn more about this, come to my talk, sign up for it. Why mirrorless? Why now? We're going to do that on Friday evening at 6 o'clock. Look for that. And
There was
some of you have, yes, go ahead, Loris.
there was a question of, can we convert monochrome cameras?
No, because you don't have you don't have a filter in the front of a monochrome camera, I believe. And that's an expensive camera. So which camera are we talking about?
Bing, do you want to write in what monochrome camera you have? I'm not sure we know which
Okay. Yeah, I that so I'm going to retrench and say, I've never been asked that question before, but the monochrome cameras, Leica and Pentax both make a monochrome camera right now, and they're fairly pricey. I wouldn't advise having those converted. I think you'd be better off to sell that camera, get the money, buy our standard camera, and then have it converted. So, I have two great internet YouTube videos, what's in my camera bag and why mirrorless. If you want the links to those, I'll be glad to send them. If you search on my name on YouTube with those titles, you'll find them right away to help you make this decision. So, what are we talking about here? So this is the scale of electronic emission. And for those of you who are an engineer, please don't get me in trouble for this. I'm not an engineer. So this is from cosmic rays to radio and television. In the middle here, we have light, and we have the visible light. Ultraviolet roughly starts at about 400 nanometers, and a nanometer is a millionth of a meter, as I remember. So ultraviolet starts with violet at 400 and comes up to red at 700 nanometers. So this is the range that our human eye can see. This is the range that your normal camera can see. What we're asking to do is to photograph on this edge just outside of the range of visible light. Now, infrared is not thermal imaging. It's not light amplification. Infrared photography cannot see through your clothes. It cannot see the heat of a rabbit hiding out in the field. That's not what infrared photography is. Infrared photography is using a very narrow spectral range to record the image, right? So for me, classic infrared photography is in the 720 nanometer range. So just outside of the visible spectrum. For those of you, that's where the Kodak high-speed infrared film was. Some of you are familiar with a Konica or Rollei film that was 750 nanometers. But one of the things I love out of the 720 nanometer is that I get some variety with it. A lot of you have asked me about 590 nanometer, which is more in the middle of the scale, gives a different look, very effective for color photography. But remember, most of my infrared is going to end up to be black and white. Some of you have asked about the 665 nanometer range infrared, and that gives a unique look. Once again, kind of an off color, odd color look. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on you. But for most of us, we need to make a choice, or you do a full spectrum conversion, which means you're making no choice when you have the conversion done, but you need to use the colored filters. So these are the Colorivision filters that go on the front of the sensor. So you have a clear glass or non-filter glass in front of the sensor. Then you need to put the colored filter in the front of the sensor, or you need to put the filter on the front of the lens. Now, it's up to you. To me, this is a whole lot of rigmarole and a lot of work to do. It's more glass to keep clean. It's problematic. This is not what I like in my infrared photography. I want my camera to pick up and to work like normal. Questions, Lorez?
No questions.
So I have chosen 720 nanometer. I have always been shooting in 720 nanometer. So the picture on the left is straight out of the camera using auto or sunny white balance. The picture on the right is straight out of the camera using a custom white balance, which I'll show you next week how to build to make your camera shoot in a slightly off color to black and white range. And that's how I do it. I use this custom white balance on my camera all the time. And this file produces this black and white image. And that's the look that I want. And so if you like the look of the 590 or the 665, great. You know, everything I talk about in the workshop, in the class will be appropriate to you. The difference is going to be in the vision in what it produces. And I can't tell you a lot about what 590 or 665 will produce. I can show in my experience of what I see, but I don't shoot those. So I don't know what results those are going to give you. So somebody asked me about what lenses do I take. I mean, this is my bag that I take to Africa. This is my bag that I'm taking to Grand Tetons in a couple of weeks. So it's a Think Tank First Light 46 with a Nikon Z9 that I'm using for my sports and action. I have the Z8 infrared, the 14 to 30 wide angle lens, the 24 to 120 lens, the 100 to 400 lens that all work. Those three lenses are awesome infrared lenses. The 400 2.8 does not work well for infrared. It works sometimes, not all the time. And then I have the built-in 1.4 extender for it. So why infrared? Picture on the right is made on a hazy morning, hazy middle of the day. In color, it's ick. Picture on the left is made at the same time using infrared. And you see through the glare in the water, you see the kelp in the water, you see the haze is dissipated by the infrared. It's awesome. You know, we go someplace like our local garden. This is Madrona Marsh in Torrance. You know, we do a lot of the photo walks, the camera walkabouts there. You know, in color, of course, it's awesome. This is one of the first places I went using infrared back in the 80s using the Kodak high-speed infrared film. Now, one of the advantages of the Kodak high-speed film was you got a blooming effect out of the image, which we don't get on a digital camera. That's just the difference between film and digital. You know, we went there with the Nikon D200 converted to infrared and how that produced the images. And then finally, the Nikon D700, my first full frame infrared camera, how you're able to get the white foliage, the dark water, the brilliant skies. You know, that is the power of the infrared. How you can adjust the white balance and change the color to make it match what you want in the picture, right? And then I graduated to the D810. So D700, D800, D810 infrared, awesome camera for infrared it was, but it was restricted to the tripod. But I still made some beautiful 36 megapixel images using the infrared. And some of my favorite images from the marsh still. And you don't think of a garden of foliage as being a great spot for infrared. And many of these are made in the shade, actually. California poppy with the 70 to 200, this is with the 100 to 400. And no, 70 to 200 on the D850, sorry, because that lens worked in infrared. And an extension tube on a California golden poppy in infrared. And then finally to the Nikon Z and what a life-changing experience that was. And, you know, one of the things I disliked about the Nikon Z for infrared at the beginning was the 70 to 200 didn't do well in infrared. But the 70 to 180 2.8 and the 100 to 400 do an awesome job in infrared. You know, in Canon and Sony, the 70 to 200 2.8s don't do well in infrared, but the 70 to 200 f4s do an awesome job in infrared. And it allows me to produce a different image, a different feel, a different look. Questions, Lores?
There's a couple. So one related to f-stop. It seems like you were using a lot of different f-stops, but is there anything to consider f-stop in relation to hotspots?
Yeah, the more you stop the lens down, the greater the hotspot gets. So most of my infrared photography is shot wide open to f5.6.
And then there was a question about the Kodak IR film was very grainy. And I'm
Yes.
saying the digital IR does not have that problem, correct?
Yeah, so I make 40 by 60 prints from my. Oh, Lores, you've never seen any of my prints, have you?
No, I might have to come to California
Oh
just
my gosh. Yeah, well, that would be cool, wouldn't it?
for sure.
Yeah, but so the modern infrared stuff is not grainy at all. And when you see, as we go through some of the examples, you'll see the later stuff is just greatly improved. So this is with the Z7 infrared. Look at the tonality. I mean, the print on this is amazing. I've printed this one 40 by 60, and it's absolutely awesome. This one hung at the Madrona Marsh for a number of years. You know, I've long traveled with infrared. You know, and one of the first places I went with infrared was to New Orleans. And this is with a pocket camera, and you can see how grainy it is. This was on a Leica Deluxe, one of the first cameras that worked with an infrared with a filter on a pocket camera. But look at how grainy it is shooting infrared. And you know, this image is still one of my favorite images I've ever made out in New Orleans with a pocket camera and the RM72 filter on it, as is this one. You know, so shooting with older technology doesn't always hurt you, but shooting with newer technology certainly is a lot more fun and it's a lot better. You know, so this is Z7 infrared from our last trip to New Orleans at Central Park. I mean, look at that. It's absolutely stunning. And, you know, I can hand hold this. I just have the camera around my neck and it's just so easy and so cool to be able to do it, you know, and you look at how crisp and sharp and beautiful these are. You know, that's what it's all about, gang. Right. And there's our horse at Jackson Square in infrared on the Z7. This is with the 24 to 70 f4 lens on the Z7. Awesome. Or one of my favorite places to photograph in Death Valley. You know, this is of course with a color camera. And most people would think out in the sand dunes in Death Valley is not a great place, but it's amazing infrared. This is at the Furnace Creek Inn, once again with a pocket camera with that Leica Deluxe and the infrared filter. One of my early experimentations in infrared. You know, the great pool there at Furnace Creek. That's awesome. Nikon D2X, color camera with the RM72 filter and infrared. You can see it's kind of grainy as well. The D200, you know, as created with the color using the false color technique we'll talk about next week. I loved that D200. It was my first converted camera. It was awesome and made some beautiful pictures and gave some very unique effects. And we'll talk about this next week. But Mike, the guy on the left here, is wearing sunglasses. Those are sunglasses, and the infrared goes right through the sunglasses. It's amazing. But this is what I really like, the infrared in Death Valley. Look what it does to the sand dunes. Look what it does to the sky and that little bit of foliage in the picture. This is with the D700, my first full frame infrared here at the Furnace Creek Ranch. And it's not the Furnace Creek Ranch anymore. It's the Oasis at Death Valley. Now, I guess the marketing department said people won't come to Furnace Creek. So one of the things you'll learn as we talk about, you know, Teresa knows this, she's out there, and Heather knows this, she's out there tonight, how cool, really super bitchin' palm trees are in infrared. They are absolutely fantastic. I love to photograph palm trees in infrared. But here the DA10, look at how the infrared has given the image. Now, the file on this, the histogram, is very narrow. And so it takes a fair amount of processing to make this work right. But I hope you agree. I mean, it's a beautiful, stunning, fantastic image when you get it done right. And that's the power of what we're doing with the infrared. And I love it. Couple things you need to be careful of infrared. Here I'm shooting kind of into the sun. I have taken the protective filter off of the lens because any type of dust or sunlight reflecting off of that protective filter will cause a ghosting in the infrared, and you never use a polarizing filter with the infrared. And then finally with the Z7, I just, getting to the Z cameras, getting to mirrorless cameras, Canon and Nikon people, Canon, Sony, Nikon people, so important. And that's, I really want to twist your arm to get you to think about going to full frame mirrorless. This is with the 14 to 30 lens on the Z7. Look at what it did to the sky. And this sky, except for those little bit of clouds on the horizon, the sky looked white. Look what the infrared did to it. Out at Rhyolite, once again, the sky, very, very faint clouds in the sky. You can see that wind chop. Amazing. How about Yosemite in infrared? Once again, one of my favorite pictures from Yosemite on the D2X, shot in infrared with a filter. D2X with the filter again. So why is it blurry? 15 seconds exposure in the middle of the day. But I love the ability to change how I was photographing. The 850 infrared up at Mono Lake, how it gave this unique look to the light and the feel to it, and to Yosemite. This is one of my favorite Yosemite photos of all time. I love what the infrared did to it with the mirror glass on the Merced River there, and have that beautiful angle to it. Color picture just didn't do that. And up in Tuolumne Meadows in Yosemite with infrared on the cornflowers, just extremely powerful images. Up once again, Tuolumne Meadows in infrared, long exposure. Here I stop down, go to ISO 60 or 80 if you have that ability in your camera, f11, f16. You might even, in this case, because we're in the shade, be able to put a neutral density filter on. In bright sunshine, adding a neutral density filter a lot of times invents, you get that halo or ghosting effect that we don't like. Unicorn Peak, sorry, with the Z7. Up once again, hiking in the Sierras. This is up at Little Lakes Valley. Amazing results using the infrared. And this is not, I mean, it looks like this, but this is not what it looks like. And you asked me, so Mark, how come the trees didn't go white? Because they're pine trees in the background and they're an evergreen bush in the foreground. Only the deciduous trees give you that white foliage look. Up at the bristlecone pines, shooting in infrared, look what it did to the sky, look what it did to the foreground, how we have this modeling where if I shoot this in color, the foreground's brown, the sky is white, and it's just, the picture is nothing. The drama I get from infrared. On this image, to shoot this in color, you would really need to wait to that last few minutes of sun, so we had some orange color on the bristlecone over here. But with infrared, I have a lot more options. I just have a lot more options to make dramatic, exciting, fun pictures. Questions, Lorez?
There is a question. It says, will IQ of infrared cameras better than that of expensive Leica cameras?
I don't understand. Whose question is that?
That was Bing. Bing Wong?
I so I don't understand the question. Bing, can you expound?
Image quality. Will the
Image quality.
yeah. Is it better?
So I I have tested and I feel that I am getting the best images out of the Nikon Z7, Z8, Z9 of any full frame camera on the market. And I've tested the lenses, I'm testing everything because it's not just about the sensor, it's about the sensor and the lenses and the processor. And taking the raw files out of my Nikon, out of the original Z7, we made 40 by 60 enlargements at Pulse Photo. I made life-size prints of people. And those images still have farther to go print-wise. But why did I stop at 40 by 60? That's the largest print we can make in the shop at Pulse Photo. So could I make bigger prints? Absolutely yes. So I just love the picture quality, and if you have a Canon R5 or an R5 Mark II or a Sony A7 R5, I mean, you're going to be able to make those quality pictures with the Sony G Master lenses and the Canon L glass also. I just, this image, all of these images, the images I picked to share with you guys, I mean, I can show you prints from many of them. If you stop by Paul's Photo, I can show you prints. They're beautiful. In fact, if you guys stop by Paul's Photo, I will give you one of my black and white prints to take home. Now, I'm not there today. I'm not there tomorrow. I will be back Friday afternoon, in the middle of the afternoon. So if you come in Friday or Saturday or Monday or Tuesday, I'll be glad to give you a black and white print to take home so you can compare the quality of what I'm getting versus what you're getting. Now, for those of you who don't live locally, I'm sorry. There's proximity has an advantage. I just love this one. This is from Manzanar on the Eastern Sierra, shot with infrared. And the reason why I shot this one on infrared is the infrared picked up detail in the guard shack at Manzanar, where in the color camera, it was just black. They had no detail and there was no detail in the sky. So just to let you know, this is with the 24-70 at 24 millimeter lens, f-stop 2.8, and I focused right here on this piece of barbed wire with the infrared camera. And this sky was white. You had no detail in it when I photographed it. Look at that angry sky. I love to do infrared for my figures, for people, because infrared gives a unique look to human skin. And you can see that the skin goes this very China doll, peaches and cream kind of white. And it allows this super starkness in the image that's so powerful. And I take the infrared camera with me. When we do the figure workshop in Italy next September, I am definitely bringing the infrared camera with me. So this is with Catherine out in Death Valley, a weekend in Death Valley. The infrared camera was really important to what I did. Now, I shot these with the DA10. I had to be on a tripod using live view focus. It was not as easy as it would be today with the Z8 in infrared. But these are pretty amazing images. These are award-winning images of here with Ariel as well. Look at what it did to the skin tone. Look at how smooth and glamorous her skin tone is and beautiful. Here's Catherine again. Look at the skin tone. It has this awesome detail, but it's like almost a glowing whiteness to it that's just so powerful. Here with Marique out in Joshua Tree, doing infrared once again into the sun, very challenging with the wrap around here in the wind. Or here's Sarah on the rocks, how the infrared made her skin so glowingly white against the black light of the blue sky. You can see what infrared is doing to people. It's absolutely glorious. I love the power of it here with Amanda on the diving board. Once again, with the palm trees. You can't beat those palm trees, guys. It's amazing. And behind her here at this location, we have the city of Los Angeles, urban Los Angeles as the background. Under infrared, you can't tell what it is. It's absolutely amazing. I just love it. Here is Gwen with the look at the skin tone. Amanda again, look at this, what the skin tone is with the eyes. It's just so powerful. And I dare any of you, who want to, look for what else is going to work better for you. I just love the way this looks, and I love the power with Larva 720 nanometer on the Z7 with the 24-70 lens. And one of my favorite places to go photograph, here at Disneyland. Amazing to photograph. And you would think, a number of you have told me, well, Mark, how come you do infrared at Disneyland? Because it takes the color away, allows us to see something different. And in my photography, I want to challenge you with what I share with you, to challenge you with what you see. Questions, Larez? I'm sorry. I get rolling here and I forget that you guys are actually out there.
Well, maybe you can tell me if I answered this correct. So Pamela was asking, do you see that detail through the viewfinder or only after processing? And I said, it depends on the camera. Mirrorless should be able to see, but others need to live view or it would be after processing.
But remember, Larez and Pamela, this picture does not look like this through the viewfinder, because this, you have to process it. The infrared image, the histogram on the infrareds is going to be generally very narrow. So you need to expand and pull out the detail that you want. So that's one of the things we'll talk a lot about in session 2 in the how-to in the image processing. We'll talk about it a little bit next week in how you find the subject and how you find the image and what pictures you want to take and what subjects you're going to choose. Did that answer your question, Pamela? And so one of the things you need to remember, gang, is, and a lot of you who just finished with the black and white workshop with me, is, yes, we're going to talk about the technique, but I'm also going to talk to you about how important it is to abstract your subjects. So here, pretty simple image. This is with the 100 to 400 lens zoomed in on a bigger scene, but every picture we make with our camera is an abstraction. We are taking a little bit of the scene and making it ours. And that's what we're doing here. And I just want to make sure that you understand that that's the power of the camera. And the infrared is not, it's an extremely powerful tool. It's not the only tool. But it allows us to take pictures that look differently. This one in bright sunshine, I'm not going to have any detail over here in these shadows with a color camera. With the infrared, I have detail. I have detail here in the foliage. This is, believe it or not, a Disneyland, gang, right? With the infrared, this is 14 to 30 lens at 14. This is over by the Haunted Mansion. I mean, and it's just absolutely stunning. But look at how I've done the composition with the fountain in the foreground, the trees in the background. This is important stuff. And Pamela, will you see this through the viewfinder? No, you have to imagine it. You have to imagine what your processing is going to do to get you where you want to be. Did I answer, Larez?
She did. You did. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's learning what the tool is going to do for you. This is again with the 100 to 400 lens from across the way. We were sitting having breakfast and I saw this image. I put my breakfast down, got the camera out and made this image, and I love it. And it's what you see and how you see it, right? It's what's possible. This is again with the 14 to 30 lens. This is with the 24 to 120 lens on the Nikon at 24. And just knowing what the tool is going to do for you. In the color camera, I could shoot this same picture, but what are all the people going to look? Lorez, if you shot this with your camera, what are the people going to look like?
Maybe bright or blown out or colorful or
They're black.
Yeah.
You can't hold the detail where the infrared holds the detail here. It's so different in how you see and what you capture. Sunrise in Washington, D.C. is amazing, but look at it in infrared and how this changes how you see it, changes the starkness, it changes the power, it changes of what we get and how we get it. I just love this. And it just, what makes this picture? Two things to me make this picture. Number one, the lady with the dog, and number two, this guy here on the wall, right? So he silhouettes there. I mean, otherwise it's a nice picture, and those two elements don't change because it's infrared, right? You still have to be a photographer. It's not, as my wife always challenges me, this is not a parlor trick. It's not sleight of hand. You still have to exercise some control and to create a beautiful image. And even though it's infrared just gives us another tool, another way to create, another story to tell, another way to see the way the human eye won't see it. So you can see that I'm using the infrared camera in a lot of different situations. You've seen travel, you've seen portrait, people. I took it to Vietnam, and it was absolutely stunning. Here's the color picture. Here's the infrared. And the color one's kind of cool, but it's not that. This is far more impact to me. Or here the pagoda straight out of the camera, then processed into a black and white. This all depends on what you see and how you see it and what you want to do. And I'm excited to share with you next week how we're going to do this differently, how we're going to see it, how we know that the flags are going to be white, the lily pads are going to be white, and the water is going to be nearly black, and how we use that in our image, and how we're going to use the infrared on the foliage to be white to draw your eye into the scene. Pamela, you asked, so Mark, do you know? I know exactly what this is going to look like when I shot it in infrared. Now, I've got 20 years of infrared experience. With you guys, we're going to have to learn this. We're going to work on it together. This was a challenging scene to photograph, and because the girl is dead backlight behind the umbrella in infrared, she's awesome. Color, not so much. Or Cuba. Questions, Loris?
Yes, apologies. Took me a moment to get. If the color balance in your camera is good, how much processing is required?
How much processing do you want to get to where you want it to be? And the white balance is all about what you want, not about right or wrong. It's all about what you want. Whose question was that, Lorez?
That was Joe's question. Joe Rosenthal.
Joe, did I answer? Because some of these are very straightforward. Now, remember, gang, I have a 3-minute rule. And for those of you who are not regulars with me, so my regulars know, I will never spend more than 3 minutes on a photograph in Photoshop in editing. So 3 minutes, if I can't do it in 3 minutes, it doesn't get done. I'm not like some of the photographers we talked about earlier that spend hours and hours and hours on one photo. Picture on the right, color, Cuba. Picture on the left, infrared. I love the infrared. I love what it brings me. Look at the color of the skin tones in this one in the bus. I love what it does to the sky and the car in infrared. I love how it highlights the man and the car in infrared. Yeah. And just how the image behaves. And yes, I compose differently. Yes, I expose differently. Yes, I take a different effect when I'm photographing in infrared than I do in color, because it's powerful that way. It's beautiful. It's amazing. And that's what I want to share. I want to be able to let you meet the tobacco farmer, the guy who's harvesting the tobacco leaves, shot in infrared so that you can see his skin tone and all the richness in his skin tone. Where in color, the background with this exposure, the foreground would be black. And that in infrared, I can process the image on the left as black and white or on the right in color, depending on what I want to share. And if you notice the streaks of blue in the guy on the left's hair and the blue on his shirt, all depends on the dye that was used. And it's not the color of the dye, it's the type of dye that's used. Or maybe it's stark black and white. We'll talk about all these techniques next week. We'll talk about seeing the image and creating the image and building the photo and how important that is. So, Z8 infrared. I can't say enough about the modern cameras. And if Canon, that would be the R5 or the R5 II. In Sony, that would be the A7R5. Nikon, the Z8, converted to infrared. Oh my gosh, look at the color on this. Look at the power. I mean, the Z8 sensor is absolutely stunning. You know, this is with the 14 to 30 lens. So using 720 nanometer with a warm white balance instead of black and white. Or we'll talk about in the third session, the processing lesson, how we can process this into a false color image and how cool that is. I mean, this is just the tools that you have. And this is why I love the 720. I know a lot of people want to try different things. That's great. Go ahead. I am sold on 720 for me. Picture on the left, straight out of camera. Picture on the right, black and white process with the Z8. Using a color swap, false color, a channel swap, false color on the Z8. Traditional black and white. I just love it. And, you know, to be able to take a camera, put it in my pocket, so when I go to Disneyland for the day with the Z8, I'm either taking the 24 to 120, the 24 to 70, or the 26 millimeter 2.8 lens. And a lot of these, I just walk around with the camera in the 26 and photograph. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And this is not a picture that you would have ever made in color. Or how about on safari in Africa for animals? Any questions, Lores?
No additional questions.
Awesome. I just love what the infrared does for me on safari. It's so beautiful, so powerful, so amazing. And you'll see that I photograph a lot of elephants with the infrared because of generally where the elephants are in these wide open spaces. That kind of lends itself to the infrared. Here's the flamingos in Amboseli with the infrared with Kilimanjaro in the background. How exciting is that? It's so amazing. And once again, the elephants. Look what the infrared does to the elephants. Look at the skin. Oh my God. Oh, I want to print this one big, 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 big. Or here's a giraffe in infrared. Why did I shoot this one infrared? To get the shadow detail on the right side of the giraffe and to darken the sky, because the sky was almost white in this picture. Or a rhino up close in infrared. How cool is that? Or a beautiful tree out in the wilderness in Africa in infrared. Or the Samburu people in infrared. Now, did I process this? Yes. Is this as light as it was when I took it? No, I processed it this light because I wanted that high key look to the image. This is more traditional processing. This is the same guys, sorry. So I think this guy is that guy. But that's traditional processing and what it looked like versus what I did here. So it's, I mean, we can't trade away our photography skills and our darkroom skills, gang. But we're able to make unique, powerful, amazing images with the benefit of the infrared camera. So next week, how to see and capture images in the camera. The week after, processing in infrared using Photoshop, Lightroom, and Nik software. September 22nd, our live field shoot, hands-on in the field. You can sign up for these at creativephotoacademy.com. I will send you the link to do those registrations. I will send you the link to the recording of tonight's class, either Friday afternoon or Saturday. It depends on when I get a chance to get it done. Any questions, Lores?
There was a question about, do you have to use zoom lenses with infrared?
No, you don't have to use zoom lenses, but we have to test the prime lenses that you're going to use to see if they work. And it's very simple. You just put the lens on, you go out I always test in bright sunshine, in overcast or shade light, and in backlight to see how the lens performs as to whether it gets my infrared okie dokie or not. Did that answer your question? Or whoever asked, so Jill, what lens are you thinking about? And yes, Carla, the sessions next week will be recorded. So if you miss them, you can catch up on them. Oh, the 26-28, yes, that works great in infrared. I love it. That's one of my favorite infrared lenses. No, Paul, I get the same sharpness on my camera, the Nikon Z8 or the Z7 with the Z S-line lenses, I am getting the same picture quality out of infrared that I am out of color camera. That may or may not be true depending on the lenses that you use. Some lenses are going to scatter the infrared light as opposed to passing the infrared light straight through. And that's probably why you're not getting the sharpness, or you're processing improperly, and who did your conversion and how did they do it? That's another thing. I've seen, so there are other people doing infrared conversions out there between LifePixel and Kolari, some of them with adequate results, some with not so good results. And that probably is depending on the filter that they're buying to put into the sensor more than anything else. Other questions? Other questions? All right. So, gang, I've had fun with you tonight. Have you guys had fun? How many of you want to try infrared? Come on, type into the chat. If you want to do infrared, awesome. Great. So I'm excited to help you with that. So please give us a call at Paul's Photo. We have a lot of used cameras in stock. I am currently trying to find us a deal on the infrared conversion. I haven't heard back yet from them. So, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So next week is going to be great. So next Wednesday, how to with the camera. The weekend after that, how to on the computer. The live shoot is always a lot of fun. Yeah, you can take the class without an infrared camera. Awesome. Yeah, no worries, Linda. Awesome. All right. Lorez, any other questions? Anything I need to know about?
No, it looks like you have covered them all.
Awesome. So next week we'll get a little bit more of the how-to. We'll answer a lot of the what do you do, how do you do it. I know a couple of you asked me beforehand about how do you see this, how do you handle that. That's all in next week. I hope I inspired you tonight, and more importantly, I just want to thank you guys for being loyal students and customers at Paul's Photo and the Creative Photo Academy, and want to inspire you to get out, make some pictures, and have some fun. If you need anything, always give me a call. Remember, I'm taking the rest of the day and tomorrow off. I'll be in the middle of the afternoon on Friday if you need me. The crew at Paul's Photo is really good. They'll be glad to take care of you. Anybody else? I'm gonna
Nope,
give
you got lots of hearts and thumbs up.
Oh, cool. All right, guys. Good night, everyone. Thank you. And we will talk to you next week, if not before. Thanks, Lorez, for your help. It was great to have you.
Thanks, Mark, as always.